Hello, this is Mikey, and welcome to another After Effects tutorial. And today we're going to be doing some text animations. Now, this is going to be using the animation selector called the expression selector. This is specifically in the text animators. And then what text animators are is kind of more of a procedural way of animating text based off of range of your characters and stuff like that. It's inside of the text layer menu. And one of the ways to do that is with a selector called the expression selector, and it's a bit of a dark art. Not a lot of people really know what this is. There's not a lot of tutorials out there about it, and I'm going to do my best to try to explain how it works because it's a little bit different than most things in After Effects. I guess like all things in After Effects are, they're a little bit different. Anyways, so we're going to be making this where the text kind of springs in. You see it stretches out when it comes out, and it kind of settles, and then it stretches when it goes back out. And this is all automatic, so like the faster your text is moving, the more stretchy it will be. So let's go over some of the things we're going to be learning in this. First off, just some basic text animations. We're going to be doing a lot of expression work and the expression selector within that text tool, and we're going to show you some ways to make it more foolproof. I'm going to be doing that all along as I go, and hopefully I'll try to call it out as I'm doing it. So before we get into it, I want to take one more step to help you understand a little bit more about what the expression selector does and how it works. So I've set up this basic setup here. And what I've done is I have this very specific size. This is 1000 by 1000 pixels. And then this grid is 100 by 100 pixels each. So there's 10 by 10. And so what I have this set up as is every second it's going to move a different number. And as I play through it, you can see every second it moves a different number down and to the right. And then it loops over again. And so what I have going on is a couple of things. I have in this text, so this text layer, if you twirl down into it, I've added an animator. So there's this animate button here. And so I just added the position animator here. And then inside of that, I went to the selector and added an expression selector and took away the range selector. So then what I have is this expression selector based on words, and there's an amount, and then there's this position that it added. So I have the position set to 100 by 100, meaning if I turn off the expression, well then this just goes, the whole thing goes 100 by 100, right? And you can see it's pixel perfect. It's moving 100 pixels. So 100 by 100, and it moves down. We can do also like 100 by 0 or 0 by 100. Probably the easier way of seeing that. And then it'll just go down, right? Dink, dink, dink. So what the expression in here is an if-then statement. And there's some bits of text, some expression language that's kind of unique to the text animators. So, which is text index and text total. You're not going to be using that in the other ones. So if the text index, meaning which one of these bits of text. So I have them all separated by a space. So After Effects looks at them as different words because there's a space in between them. So if the first word is equal to the time, I set it back a second, then display 100. So output 100% of the effect, meaning go all the way to this 100. Else, do 0. So if it's not the same number as the time, then do 0. You can see that it's a little bit confusing, but also powerful at the same time. I hope you can understand that. The code, whatever code you write in here, it'll loop through it as many layers as you have to loop through, as many text indexes. So this has 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, because it's set up as words. If it was set up as characters, that would be, 11 plus all the spaces, right? So there'll be like 20 of them. Then it would loop through that many times. I wanted to show you this where it was kind of a pixel perfect thing where I'm moving something by the exact amount. So this 100 here, the output of 100 is equal to the position and the movement of 100 here because the way I have it set up. this is kind of the basic understanding of what I'm going to do with the next stage, which is just let's build this thing. We're going to need two components to make this work. We're going to need a text layer, obviously, and then another just like a null layer that we can use as a control layer. So let's do a new null object, call this control, and then a text layer. All right, to continue on, there's some things we're going to do to, this is one of the first things of making it foolproof. And what I want to do is instead of just start connecting this layer to that layer just through normal expressions, I'm going to use a layer control, which is, if you go up, I want this on the text layer, go to layer, or sorry, effect, and go to expression controls, and then do a layer control. And it brings in just this familiar menu, this layer control, but it really doesn't do anything. I can pick whatever layer I want in here, and it's not doing anything yet until we start connecting it. And this is just another way of connecting things. But what this has the benefit of doing is if I'm going to turn this into a preset or copy and paste these things onto something else, well, then I can just select my layer through this, and everything will still be connected and it won't break any of the expressions. So what we're going to do is let's select that control layer. And inside of this, first we're going to into the transform. And then we're going to do two things. We're going to do the anchor point and the position. So let's do the position first. I'm going to just pick whip that layer up in the effects menu. And then let's see what it says. If we go in here, see, it give me an error. It's not, oh, we haven't done anything yet. But this is bringing in the effect of that layer, control layer, whatever layer is picked, which is beautiful. It doesn't have to be the right layer. It could be whatever layer you want. And then let's go dot transform.position, and with a semicolon, and you see it brought it up there. So that's pretty cool. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this anchor point and we're going to just pick whip it to the position. So right now it's kind of stuck. It's stuck at 0, 0 is what it is. You can see it's right up here in the corner, but you can see the anchor point is moving around. So this will make sense in a minute. Right now it's not doing what it should be doing because we need to add more to this. So let's go into the text, and then we're going to animate the position. And this whole composition is a 1920 by 1080, so I can just start using those numbers as if that is what it is. Or again, we can make this a little more foolproof. And in this position range right here where it's set to 0, 0, remember like in my example where I had everything at 1000 and 100 and I had the movement at 100? Well, this movement needs to be 1920 by 1080. But if I stick it in a different size canvas, it's going to do something different. So let's do an expression here. So in square brackets, let's write thisComp.width and then thisComp.height. In the square bracket and with a semicolon. Now, what had happened is it moved everything all over to here. But this was based on the range selector. And you can see what's going on is it's moving everything all the way over. We don't want the range. This is normal. This is what people are used to when it comes to animation, expression selectors and stuff like that. So I'm going to get rid of the range. And with the range gone, it just does everything. So let's add a different selector, and let's do the expression selector. And you can see right off the bat it's looking different because let's see what it's doing. It's taking the selector value, which is just the value, and the text index divided by text total. So as it's running through each index divided by the total, so as it gets more and more closer to the total, say the total is 10, and then text index would be 10, that would be 10 divided by 10 is 1, times the value is 100, outputs 100, and then boom, it goes all the way. So each loop, it's doing a different thing. Now there's a couple things we want to change here. One, of course, this expression is not what we're going to be using, and two, I want this to be set on words, not characters. And so you can see now with words, it's going like this. All right. First things first is let's make it so that this text is moving correctly. Right now, it's not moving correctly. So what we want to do is we need to bring in the position value of this null, this control null. So let's create a new variable inside of this amount. So this is the first time we're really doing some major expression writing here. So let's call it null position. So in nullPos equals, and then what we're going to want to do is, again, let's pick whip that layer control that's right up here at the top, and then we're going to type .transform.position. And then we want this to output basically between 0 and 100%. So when it's way up here, see, you can look, it's not quite working right. Things are looking a little bit weird. But when things are up here at 0, 0, I want the text to be at 0, 0. And when things are way down here at 1920 by 1080, I want the text to be at 1920 by 1080. It's not quite working. There's some scaling issues going on. And so let's write the output. So in square brackets, I just typed in the square brackets and I put my cursor inside of that. Let's first do, we need this variable, the one that we just brought in, but let's just take the first of it. So in square brackets 0, that means the first value of the 2-value variable. And we're going to take that, and then we're going to times that by the inverse of the width, right? So the width is 1920 by 1080, but we want 100 divided by it. So 100 divided by, and then I'm going to just pick whip, messed up there. I'm going to just pick whip that first layer, that first of the position, and you can see the text animator position property. And then for the second part of this 2-part output, because position is a 2D point, we need 2 variables here. I'm going to just take that piece that I just typed up, going to put a comma, then copy it, and then just swap out right here where it says 0 with a 1, and then here at the end where it says 0 with a 1. And look at this, we have an error. And the error is, look, it says this reference is not defined, and this is one of those simple things where I just didn't put a semicolon after the end of the sentence, and then there. Now it works. Now what we have is we have this following this exactly. And this seems like a lot of setup just to make the text follow a null object. But since I'm doing it through this expression selector, well, we can make things do some magic stuff here. This is where it gets exciting. What I want to do is I want this to move, these text indexes, to move at different times based on which index they are. So what we can do here on this null position is if we add another expression to this. So at the end of position, I'm going to do .value at time. And then inside of the time, I'm going to put, let's say time minus index. Let's see what that does. Or actually, sorry, text index. Doesn't do anything. You know why? It's because this isn't moving. And even if I move it around, it needs keyframes because it's looking at the time, and the time is always, where it's supposed to be. So let's set some keyframes. There's the position. Let's move forward a few frames. Move the position over there. And what we have is a very delayed response. So delayed, it's not even finishing it. That's because time here is set in seconds, and so is the index. So it's wanting to go 1 second delayed. And we don't want it to be a whole second delayed. We want it to be just basically 1 frame delayed. So instead of minus the text index, let's put that in parentheses. And we want that to be the text index divided by, I'm going to just put 24 because I know it's 24 frames a second. And let's take a look at it now. All right. It's working. It's all squishy, but you can see that it's working. It works one way, but not the other. So let's go back into this expression, and we're going to make some changes to it. So we need to figure out if it knows which way is which, right? So I need to create like a velocity variable to determine if it's going one way or the other. So let's call it VEL for velocity equals, and let's just take the same first part, copy that. So the layer effect transform position dot, but we're going to go velocity at time. and then just put time in there, and with a semicolon always, or you're going to find some issues in the future. And then if it's a positive or a negative number, because it's going to output a positive or a negative number based off of that position. So then we want to do an if-else statement. So if velocity is greater than 0, let's do this code, else we do a different code. So I'm going to just copy and paste this in here for now, just to make sure nothing is broken. And it should look exactly the same, because if it's basically, it's saying if it's one way, do this code, and if it's a different way, then do the same code. And what we need to do is this text index. We need to change that index. So we're going to, instead of go at the start and go to the end, we need to go start at the end and then go to the start. So I'm going to do textTotal and then subtract that. All right. And there's some issues here because I missed something very important. What's going on is it's taking the whole velocity value, the up and down and the left and right. But I'm moving just left and right here. So I need to, in this if-then statement, instead of just velocity, I'm going to put in square brackets a 0 there. And then you can see that we had this wrong the whole time. So let's turn this around. But there's still some weird little jumpinesses, right? And what I want to do to make that a little more foolproof, and so I'm not just going one direction, is that as it goes across, you can see that it's still animating halfway past this keyframe. I want it to stop animating, and I want the peak stretchiness to be in the middle. And so I need some sort of way of scaling when this velocity right now is set to 0. And then right there, the velocity is set to 0. But in between, it's a big number. And same thing, in between here, it's a big number. But one way is a positive number, one way is a negative number. So we need to turn that into just a positive number and use it as a scalar to our whole operation here. So let's create another expression or another variable called x. I'm just using that as a scalar. And what I'm going to do is Math.abs, which is the absolute value of that velocity. And then we can take this, that x, and then we just times that by the offset, right? So the time minus all of this right here, which is going to be right after that one, times x, and then we do the same thing here, times x, and let's see it. It's too fast. So how do we slow that down? Well, we take that velocity and let's scale it down a little bit, right? Divided by 100, let's see if that works. Wow, it's a big one. Ended up being divided by 10,000. That's how much that scalar needed to be. So let's take a look at this code. It's a little bit complex, but I'm going to go through it one at a time. So we have the velocity. This is determining if it's going left or right. We have this x, which is just the scalar. It's taking the absolute value of that velocity, so turning it into always a positive number, scaling it down by 10,000. But what's going to happen is it's going to be between 0 and that top number. So it's still going to be a positive number, it's just not going to be very big. And then if it's going in one direction, we go this bit of code. If it's going the other direction, we do the opposite code. And then we times that all by that scalar x. So that as it approaches this keyframe where it stops, then the effect on it will slow down. And what that essentially lets us do is we can have these as close as we want to each other, and it'll still play nice. All right, so that's the tutorial. I know there's a lot in here. And this expression, don't worry, it's pasted down in the description below. Also, there's a lot more we could do to this to kind of beef it up, make it better, make it more robust and more foolproof. I'm not going to be doing that in this tutorial. I just wanted to kind of get you back into the swing of things of me doing tutorials, and also just get you to understand more about the expression selectors in the text animators. So my plan is to continue developing this, turn it into a really nice preset for you all that I'll just have available over at Element Supply Company. And so that's that. I'm feeling rusty. It's been a while since I've done a tutorial, so I would really appreciate some encouragement, and so I can keep doing these things. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.